Hey, this is Stephen Amell, and you are listening to Tomorrow's Legends, the podcast. Don't fail your city.
When the danger becomes more than one hero can handle, when enemies rise beyond one city and threaten the entire world, a team must gather together to battle the odds. A team of extraordinary heroes. And that team will call themselves the Justice League.
Hello, Unlimited Leaguers. We hope you're not seeing double, although the view of two Supergirls is not a bad thing. Today we're talking about Justice League Unlimited Season 1, Episode 6, Fearful Symmetry. I'm the one and only, I hope, X-Force 11.
And I hope I'm also the only Harley Quinn, because that could get awkward.
Yeah. So Martin isn't with us this week. He's taken some time, and we appreciate if you would just reach out to him and support him. And he's kind of going through a little bit of a rough time losing his other cat, and we just feel awful for him and wanted to give him a little bit of a break. And so our thoughts and prayers are with him.
Yeah, and I know he'd definitely appreciate hearing from everyone. Although, he's going through a lot, so of course, he may not respond back. But I think he would appreciate any well wishes you could send his way. So. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we are on the Cybercast Network, and we are Tomorrow's Legends, covering Legends of Tomorrow and Stargirl and Superman and Lois, and it feels like 1,000 other things. But most importantly, right now, you are tuning in because you are listening to the Justice League Unlimited, and hopefully soon this year, we will also be covering the upcoming Lanterns series. Mm-hmm. We feel like we've been saying that for a very long time, but but it should be coming soon. Yeah. And of course, also on the network that you definitely want to make sure to check out is Dive into DC with the Silver Fox and Green Butterfly. In March, they're going to be covering the Amazon animated show Batman Caped Crusader Season 1, and they're going to do 2 episodes at a time. So if that sounds fun to you, definitely give them a listen. They do an amazing deep dive and an amazing podcast. So they are a ton of fun if you have not listened to them before. And then, of course, we have The Mandalore, and that is everything Star Wars on Disney+. They cover it all. If it's Star Wars, if it's on Disney+, they're covering it. So you can tune into that one as well.
Yeah. So, and that Batman Caped Crusader is kind of, it's kind of a throwback show. It's done by Bruce Timm. It's kind of like Batman, the animated series, but just a little bit different spin on stuff like Penguin is a woman and some other things like that. But it's a cool little show. I watched it when it first came out, so it's a cool one.
Nice. Well, yeah, if that's your jam, and I love all things Batman, so I don't know if I'll have time to get into it and leave feedback, but everybody else should.
Yeah. I'm not going to play a news bumper, but they have revealed the kind of basic Lanterns logo, and it's pretty plain, but people were thinking that they are going to maybe introduce more color into it, and it's interesting that it's lanterns, and that could be more than one thing because you have green lanterns and blue lanterns and red lanterns. So it's kind of ambiguous, and it may be one of those things where if they pull something in, they could change the color to green or to blue or to red or, that kind of stuff. But
that's true.
And we should be hearing, like, getting a trailer or something soon is what the kind of the rumbling that I'm hearing. But that's all we have news-wise. So,
so as usual, not a lot to go on.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
All right. So I gave this episode 8.5 double troubles. I really enjoy the question. And I know he and Rorschach from Watchmen are like twisted twins because they're masked and they're questioning everything. But I kind of like this version better. And it was really fun to see a Supergirl versus Power Girl fight, even if it wasn't really Power Girl. But I loved the Green Arrow's kind of counter to question on a lot of things and how they were both just there to help Supergirl in their own way. So I really appreciated it.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it too. I gave this one 8 bad dreams. It was really interesting getting to learn more about the question and just sort of like how conspiracy theories are kind of at the heart of everything, at least in his world, you know what I mean? And so, because I don't know as much about that particular DC character. Like I've seen him kind of like here and there, but yeah, it was fun to kind of get to learn more about him. And then of course it was fun to see as we had like the 2 storylines with him, Green Arrow and Supergirl, sort of like converge and diverge and then come back together again at the end. It was kind of interesting to see how they went about it. Yeah. Because they each had their own way about doing things and they ultimately came to the exact same conclusion. So that was, kind of funny. They never did get the professor behind it all, though.
No, they didn't.
So I kind of liked that is left hanging. I'm wondering / hoping that comes back to play in the future. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
Gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled.
All right, so for our guest voices this week, we've got Green Arrow back, and that's Ken Schreiner. We've got Supergirl back as well, that's Nicole Tom. And we also have Galatea, also voiced by Nicole Tom. We got The Question, voiced by Jeffrey Combs. And he had multiple roles on DS9. He was Brunt, and he was a bunch of different characters. He interestingly, he was kind of a clone in that one as well.
Oh.
But he was also in the Frighteners movie and many other animated shows. And then we've got Professor Emil Hamilton, voiced by Robert Foxworth, the modern Transformers movies, and also Falcon Crest. You kind of recognize him when you see him. Yeah. We've got General Hardcastle, voiced by Charles Napier. He was in the Blues Brothers, Silence of the Lamb, Rambo 2, and he also played this exact same character in the Superman, the animated series. So he's got carryover from that one. Okay. And then we've got Gilbert Hallstrom, voiced by Sam McMurray, who was in Raising Arizona, Addams Family Values. So those are our guest players for this week.
Very good. I know it's always fun to see where these people have come from and what other properties they've been involved in. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, let's dive into the discussion. I'm going to kick it off here with the first section called Nightmare or Not. And so I thought what was so interesting about this opening was actually all of the destruction that was happening, because it seemed kind of out of character. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm just not familiar enough with this version of Supergirl. We're kind of getting this rough around the edges, not so nice version on the big screen. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, maybe, this is a different version, maybe in the comics or whichever version of the comics they've pulled her from, that, this is kind of that version of it. So it was interesting. Definitely felt a little off at first.
Yeah, definitely. Because she is running down Hellstrom, and he's a research chemist who works for Nouveau Gen that we find out about later. And he gets away thanks to these soldiers in jetpacks with kryptonite guns. And I thought that was very cool, use of technology and how they knew how to directly fight her. And she fights them all off, and then he tracks him to the lab, and she's almost taken out by this robot, but stops it and, finds him. So, it was kind of an interesting take on, like you said, it's very different from what you would expect from Supergirl and how she's reacting and going after him.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I did really like the use of all of the tech. I mean, we get to see a lot of it throughout the episode. And it did kind of remind me about, in the Superman and Lois show when we saw, this version of like the DOD and our version of Hardcastle over there, who is a little bit different. But it was kind of fun to like get to see all the different weapons that they'd been creating and the creativity there.
Yeah. And then we get to see her wake up in bed and she's in a cold sweat and she realized she's blasted holes in the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, that's, a dangerous thing to have happen. So,
right? I was thinking that. I was like, I hope there's nobody above her. That could be bad.
Or it's not a rainy day.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. I did think that was pretty crazy. Just that kind of like that reveal of when she wakes up, and we definitely get to see that it is some sort of dream. It did bring up a lot of interesting questions at that point. You're like, okay, well, I guess we're going to see where this goes.
Yeah. So the cool thing is she has John Jones, Martian Manhunter, look into her mind. And he can't really say if it's real or not, because it doesn't seem like a dream, but she does, feels it's real. And so he's like, I'm putting you on the inactive roster, go and figure it out. But there was a very cool line in there. We find out that Martians don't dream. So when they're sleeping, standing up, like we've seen him, he's just out. He doesn't dream. So they're in some sort of hibernation or something. I don't know. It's weird, but Martians don't dream.
Yeah, just kind of like a trance.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, every once in a while, I have had those nights where it's just like, you kind of like, you go to sleep and you wake up and there wasn't much going on in between for like whatever reason. And it is kind of like off-putting. It's almost like a form of time travel in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So that is interesting. They can't read each other's minds, right? Although I guess there's no more Martians, and then they can't dream. So that's just very interesting brain chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I thought was really interesting is that she actually turns to the Green Arrow for help. I was like, okay. I guess I wouldn't have guessed that the two of them would have been close enough that she would actually go to him for help sorting out something that seems really, really personal.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like the two of them this episode, and the two of them working together, and like kind of like their relationship that they have, the friendship that they have. I did enjoy it.
Yeah. And so Question shows up and basically listens to her and says, there sounds like repressed memories to me. And we find out, and I don't think, not from what I saw, but I don't think this was in Superman, the animated series. Maybe it was, and I just missed it on the backs, that info. But we find out Supergirl was injured when Superman was brainwashed, and she was fixed up at Star Labs, but she was in a coma for a while. And so we have this kind of introduction of where we're going with that information.
Yeah, I did like that there was, kind of like this whole like thread of truth that ends up kind of going through everything. I didn't remember this either, but it's been so long since I've seen Superman the animated series. I was a kid and I have not rewatched it, so I'm not surprised I don't remember too much from it. So I was just kind of like, did I miss an episode in like the Justice League that series that we just finished? Or that's kind of like where my head was. I was like, I don't remember the storyline happening at all.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move into our next section called Conspiracy Theories. And so we've met the question. And so the question was created by Steve Ditko and first appeared in Charlton Comics in Blue Beetle #1 in 1967. And then they got acquired by DC Comics and in the early 80s kind of incorporated in. And so this version is Vic Sage, and we get to see his real face when he's in the cab there. So, it's been the character's been changed through the years, and his protege, Renee Montoya, who's a detective in Gotham, took up his mantle and became his successor, and she's the current question. And so basically some of the uses here, they've got a mask that, disguises them. They've got, he's got a genius level intellect. He's, a detective, journalist, but he's also got the martial arts skills and some mystical powers. So, that's kind of interesting. So he's kind of a mix of everything.
Huh. Interesting. That is, I was wondering like what his power set was, because I didn't really look it up. And as we were like going through the episode, I couldn't like kind of quite figure it out from some of the details we were getting. But this does all make sense. I mean, we saw a lot of this. I mean, we saw, the hand-to-hand combat that came into play in a couple of different scenes. I mean, definitely the stealth, all of that sort of stuff. And so it's interesting. There's also some mysticism mixed in there.
Yeah. So the kind of the interesting thing is the modern day Renee Montoya. She's the question, and she for a while had an on and off again relationship with Batwoman. So that was kind of an interesting thing in some of the comics that I read. So yeah.
Okay.
But the question believes in this all-encompassing conspiracy, not conspiracies, just one.
Just one.
Yeah, going back to ancient times. And boy, does his room look like a conspiracy theorist wonderland there.
Right. I know, he's complete with like the yarn, the string or whatever, connecting all the different threads. I was like, oh my gosh, like it kind of feels like he has a theory for everything, but maybe like you said, it's just, really just one big theory and everything's connected. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's definitely a different way to kind of like look at life. But in the end, I mean, you can't knock it. Him following his theory and his hunches leads him straight to the same place that Kara and Ollie end up in. So
yeah. So if you enjoy conspiracy theories, go check out the Why Files, WHY, on YouTube, because he covers them all. And so he's got some, he'll say what the conspiracy is, and like it's real, and then he'll break stuff down and say it can't be this, or it could, that kind of stuff. It's a fun channel to watch, but he would definitely dig right in with the question. So
oh, for sure. Yeah. That would be fun.
All right, the next section is lab tests. So we head over to Star Labs, and Professor Emil Hamilton, so he is a supporting character in the Superman comics, and he kind of goes back and forth because sometimes he's a real trusted ally to Superman and the colleagues, but then he kind of gets mistrustful of Superman and his power, and then sometimes he's he's a straight out, he's a villain. So like he's kind of back and forth, and his name comes from Edmund Hamilton, who wrote stories about Superman and other characters in the 40s to the 60s. So that's kind of where they took his name from. Oh, so
kind of an homage a little bit.
Yeah. And so he shows them where Supergirl was treated and says, she wasn't doing any missions while she was in a coma. And he shows her this very small version of the robot that she saw in her dream. And she said, he says, hey, this is a surgical droid. This is the one that saved your life. And he says, basically, you're not used to being vulnerable and being out of control. And this is your mind trying to grasp it. So.
Oh, man. And I fell for it. Like, it seemed so plausible. I was like, oh, yeah, I totally get that. That makes sense. I could track with all of that. You can see the pieces and parts. You can set the right location. Like, there was just enough truth there that you believed in what he was saying. And like, you could see how like psychologically, like if you're in a coma, like how that could be traumatizing and it would mess with your head. So I was definitely willing to accept it because it matched up to everything that in her dream vision, whatever. So they got me.
Yeah, yeah. And so they come out of Star Labs and they immediately get attacked. There's these helicopters and we got soldiers and we got this robot. And so Supergirl battles the robot, takes it out. Green Arrow takes out one of the copters and the Question takes out the soldiers. So it was a kind of a good three-way split of them each taking a target. So
yeah, and so that did kind of work out well, and again, kind of lends to the Question's capabilities of being more of like a martial artist or like hand-to-hand combat and all of that. But this is the point where I started to feel a bit suspicious. I was like, hold on. I was just totally just buying the entire explanation. And now they're being attacked by all of these robots that all have kryptonite weapons. Like, this is not a coincidence. Although I still didn't quite guess that the professor was behind it until they revealed that at the very, very end.
Yeah, me neither. So,
but I was definitely suspicious after they were like immediately attacked. I was like, oh, well, they're going down the right path.
So they talk about it, and General Hardcastle is the one who designed the robots, and the League actually uses them for training. And so they are thinking, okay. And then Supergirl says Hardcastle is the one that actually injured her in that battle and caused her to go into the coma. And so they're thinking, okay, we've got a lead. Let's go after that one.
Exactly. And it does turn out to be a bit of a red herring here, but we got some really interesting history. And I was definitely kind of falling for it. I was like, oh, well, maybe, this guy is still like pulling the strings somehow. Like he was wronged and he's coming back at them from the shadows. I don't know. That seems very villainy, right?
Yes, indeed.
I was really sad that they killed him. Not they, but that Taya kills him.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been nice if he had stuck around. I was like, oh, but he's such an interesting character. What a waste.
Yeah. So he's gone but not forgotten. So the team heads to Hardcastle's cabin and finds him there, but he's ready for them.
Yeah, which was interesting. I was like, what? Why are you ready for them? But I guess he's just so distrustful of aliens in general, because that weapon was like crazy powerful. It really only had one shot, but I guess having all of this research to help save the world from a rogue Superman has really paid off for him, because he basically has this like handheld shotgun made out of kryptonite that only has one shot. Apparently that's all you would need based on the way that he described it. I was like, that sounds nasty. I don't want to get hit with that.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So he talks about that the army really failed at stopping Superman when he went rogue, and they basically forced him out. And, he had to take early retirement because they didn't trust him to lead the men in since he had failed. And he says the issue is he knows too much, and the military and big business are in cahoots, going back to that conspiracy, and they're going to take him out.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that. Like when you get to like a certain level and you have like a certain knowledge, I feel like you kind of don't just retire and go off into the sunset, or I guess you can try to, but it's like people are going to keep tabs on you for sure. So
Yeah. An interesting thing here is he said Volcana and the Royal Flush Gang were made by the military. And he says, basically this military business cabal has a file on every one of the members of the Justice League group, and they are looking for ways to take them down. But he also says he doesn't know what's going on with her dreams. So it's kind of a little bit of a dead end there.
Yeah, that's true. And that's where it gets kind of like interesting. I mean, one, because we're getting all of this crazy information of like they have files on everyone so that they can take them out at a moment's notice. But I guess after experiencing everything with Superman, one can't be too careful. We have seen the rogue Superman story play out a couple different ways. So, I get it. But what I wasn't expecting was that they had kind of created some of these other villains. So he definitely definitely had his hands in a lot of things, but not in anything that was relating to her dreams. So.
Yeah. So we get Taya, as she calls herself, showing up, and basically right after the team beams out, and she takes him out. And the interesting thing is Taya's look is heavily based on Power Girl. So
Gotcha.
The white suit, the cutout, being a little bit older, but it's lacking some of those direct things that Power Girl has, like the capes and the boots and that kind of stuff. So, but very much a take on Power Girl.
Yeah, so they were kind of trying to do a nod there, because I was like, she was different enough that I did give it a second thought, but like I think like the eyes kind of gave it away, which I think it was in the voice. Of course she sounds exactly the same because same voice actress. But
all right, our next section is called Running Down a Dream.
Very good.
So Supergirl wakes knowing Hardcastle is dead. So basically, it looks like she's seen what happens. And Manhunter confirms that also the scientist that we saw, her pursuing in the dream is also dead, Hellstrom. And kind of the interesting thing is my background is from that scene where we see John talking.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got the reporters over here on the screen. But anyway, so they decide to split up. And the question goes after the reporter and the story. And then Green Arrow and Supergirl go to the Nouveau Gen labs. So they kind of get to split up because of how they're looking at things.
Yeah, so this is where they kind of follow the trail that they each want to follow, because they're not suspicious, but not exactly trusting of the questions methods. And so, so this is where they kind of diverge for a minute. Yeah.
So the reporter, Laster, is in the bar, and he gets questioned by one of the other reporters, about how he got the leads, and he's kind of putting the other reporter off. And so he gets into the questions taxi, and it's kind of funny because, he gets in the taxi and they turn down this alleyway, and you look, and like where you're supposed to see the picture of the taxi driver, it's quite obviously not the question. It's a Middle Eastern guy. And so he's like, what's going on here? And then the question gasses him with, basically something that helps him tell the truth. And, he finds out that basically Laster's girlfriend gave him the information, and the girlfriend is Taya.
Surprise!
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Which I guess is not too horribly surprising.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
So over at the lab, Ollie fills in as a security guard and gets Supergirl in, but we see Taya following.
And this is kind of like what cracks me up, because I like how they each have kind of their own methods and ways of getting this information and ultimately leading to the same place.
Right.
Because the question kind of follows his hunches and his theories, and he still ends up there, but at a more opportune time, at least, since Green Arrow and Supergirl were a little bit more direct and decided to just go straight to the source.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, we find out that the lab cloned Supergirl, aged her up a few years, and we find out that their minds are linked. And I'm kind of curious because, did they just wake Taya up? Because, you would think that Supergirl would have memories or dreams like this before, if their minds were linked, or was there something that caused their minds to link? This was something that wasn't clear that I had questions about.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that was very clear either. And I think with you, the only conclusion I came to is that they had just woken her up and didn't know about the implications. Either that or she's not the first clone, and for whatever reason, this version of the clone just happened to like link up with their minds. But I don't know. I'm leaning kind of towards like she had just woken up, and because all of the dreams were her, like what they said, that her training exercises or her training simulations. So that's kind of why I went there.
Yeah, could be. So they chase her into this testing facility that's like a combo holodeck from Star Trek and the X-Men's danger room. So we've got, solid light, training, and, they're able to move around and all that kind of stuff. So it was really kind of cool to see.
It was really cool to see. And I think how they explained it, I don't think you have it listed anywhere else, was just that it was like the hard light constructs. And so, kind of lends itself to like Green Lantern. And so that was just kind of like an interesting way of like how they kind of created all of these simulations that felt so real, which is, why it ended up fooling Supergirl in the end of like, are these really my memories? Like, why am I doing this? Like, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So we find out that Taya basically sent the folks after Supergirl and was really luring her there. And the real reason is she does not want anyone reading her mind.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
Although I this is why I hope it comes back, because I feel like they just left like all of these little breadcrumbs of interesting story points. I'm like, but why? Like, obviously it's something nefarious, but I want to know more. So.
Yeah. And then we get this really cool battle sequence between the two of them. And it was just epic of them throwing each other around and Taya like picking up a building and throwing it on Supergirl. So it was just very cool to see, no restraints there since it is this construct. So
yeah, that's true. It's not like they're in a real city. They don't have to really worry about the distraction. They're just kind of going for it. And so, yeah, from that respect, it was really cool to kind of just see them go at each other, see their full capabilities. And then, poor Green Arrow, he's just doing his best trying not to get killed. So that was kind of funny.
So the question comes up to the door of the lab, and he's like looking at the lock and he's looking at stuff, and you think he's going to like hack it. Yeah. And then he gets a planner and just breaks the glass and walks right in.
I thought that was so funny. I was like, oh, does he have some like cool little like device? Yeah. Nope. He's just confirming he can't get in.
Yeah, I mean, he probably like, can I pick this? No. Okay, let's go the easy route.
Yeah, that's kind of how I read that too. Like, there was no way he was going to like hack it or whatever.
Yeah. So he gets into the construct and he basically confronts Taya and he says, listen, you're doing this because the link goes both ways. And you don't really want to deal with Supergirl's conscience because it's feeding back into you.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that particular part. They did say that. Okay, so that was maybe part of the reason, definitely at least the reason that they laid out in this episode of like why she didn't want someone else in her head, because it was literally preventing her from doing what she needed to do. But I do still think the question remains of like what's her greater mission and her greater purpose, because there's definitely something there. Yeah,
I mean, they ask her about who's at the top and she says, I don't even know.
Yeah.
So she knows that she's part of this, she's a tool for this cabal, and she's happy to do that, but she doesn't even know who's at the top.
Do you think she even knows about like the professor? Because they did say that, she stays in a coma. So
yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I probably not, but I don't know.
That's where I was leaning towards, that she wouldn't be in the know for that.
Yeah.
So
it's a need to know, and she doesn't need to know.
Yeah, or maybe he's at the top. Maybe he's running the whole shadow organization.
I don't know. I don't think so. But the interesting thing is, whoever the leader is watching everything. And then he basically calls the lab director and basically says, okay, blow up everything. And, we see the whole building getting blown up, and there's no sign of Taya. So we assume at that point that she's gone too. So
I did assume that.
Not found. So
yep. Shame. I did kind of assume that. I did think it was weird that she wasn't found, though. And I was like, okay, all right. What's the catch?
Nobody, no death.
Exactly.
Yeah. So basically, the professor, Supergirl calls up the professor and says, listen, we didn't give anybody the DNA. We destroyed it. And then the hang up. And then we get the reveal. There's two military guys there, and the clone is there in Star Labs. And, basically they wanted a superhuman alien on their side, and he's treating her not like a lab project and more like a, somebody he, cares for, like a daughter's, he's really invested in her from that just little scene. So it's kind of interesting. And I agree with you. Like, are we going to see more of this in the future? Like, it leaves you wanting more. And I'm like, I can't remember. Do we get to see any more? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we do. It does. I do feel like it leaves you wanting more. So, and they definitely left it unfinished. They definitely left it with a clear, teaser that there should be more to come. So I'm thinking there's more to come.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts that you have about the episode before we...
I don't think so. It was an enjoyable episode, but it did kind of, it was mostly one story. It had a couple things here and there, but it was just a fun ride. It kind of progressed. I feel like we covered it all. I don't really have any other things.
Sounds good. So this is the time that we're going to take a little bit break, and you'll hear some ads from our sponsors.
Shape out an eagle!
All right. Looks like you are up first, maybe.
Actually...
No.
I don't think I am.
Okay.
I didn't reorder them in the notes, and I forgot my timestamp, but you're first.
All right. So mine is called Conspiracy Theory, so let's take a listen.
Okay, enough. Don't listen to this guy. Everything's conspiracies with him.
Not conspiracies. Conspiracy. Singular. Reaching back to ancient Egypt, there's been a single cabal of powerful individuals directing the course of human history. But the common man prefers to believe they don't exist, which aids their success.
Global warming, military upheavals in the third world, actors elected to public office.
The spread of coffee bars, germs outpacing antibiotics, and boy bands? Come on, who would gain from all this?
Who indeed?
What does any of this have to do with my dreams?
If I'm right, you're part of it. You're going to need my help. I'm going with you.
Hold your horses. No one asked for more help. This whole trip might just prove the kid shouldn't eat nachos before bed.
Peanut butter sandwiches.
How did you... What, do you go through my trash?
Please. I go through everyone's trash.
Yeah, so the question here is laying out all of his conspiracy theory. It's hard for me not to. So, but just, all the connections and this, that, and the other, and it all traces back. So it was just kind of fun to get the basis of his character. So, I just enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I getting to kind of listen back to it and hear it in all of his detail. Just because I think it really informs his character a lot and informs kind of how he approaches things. And so, I liked that part of it.
Yeah.
It's good character building.
All right, you're up.
All right. Well, we're going to go with a scene I called Hardcastle Knows Too Much.
Figured someone would come for me someday. Only I thought they'd be from the other side. This weapon fires a projectile of kryptonite pellets suspended in a liquid silicon core. Causes maximum scatter on impact. Only gets one shot, but trust me, alien, it'll do the job.
We're not here to hurt you. We just have some questions.
Sorry if I don't take your word for it. As I recall, your kind can be fickle.
Okay, now what, smart guy? You use up your magic bullet on me, and you're left with one very ticked-off Supergirl. Now be a good host, and tell us a story.
The army shut me out after Superman invaded. The feeling upstairs was I failed when it counted most, so how could I lead again? I got the message and took early retirement. Problem is, I know too much. One of these days, they'll decide to shut me up.
Who will? What do you know?
The military and big business have been in cahoots for decades. Top secret stuff. Experiments on metahumans, mutants, aliens. Searching for new technologies, both for national security and profit. That Volcano woman, she was one of ours. Same with those freaks the Joker made up like playing cards.
Any of it have to do with Supergirl?
It has to do with all of them. Your little club up in that spaceship? There's a file on every one of you. But I don't know anything about these dreams of yours. If it is connected to these people, I've been out of the loop too long to know.
And how do we find these people?
You don't. They find you.
Sorry, kid. Dead end, I guess.
Not necessarily. Need some time to process this. Martian, pick us up.
So, of course, I liked this character a lot. I'm kind of sad. It was just kind of like a one-shot wonder, but I did want to hear kind of him just lay out all that history and kind of like catching us up. Like, I did feel like that was a good way, at least, to kind of bring in that history, maybe like from the other series for people like me who either didn't see it or don't remember seeing it. And so it is a shame that we lose him, though. But I did like getting to see the whole confrontation, especially with the part with Green Arrow where he's like, "You're gonna have a really mad Supergirl if you shoot me with that thing."
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, good stuff. Well, we would love you to support our show, and this is how you do it.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
Don't hide all night and day and wish that you could have your say. The time is now for you to take the floor. Top up your drink and find your nerve. Get the attention that you deserve. But keep it quick, we've no patience for a bore. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your chance to step up into the spotlight and tell us what you think. Here they are, ready to listen to your feedback or show you the door. The Flash, Harley Quinn, and X-Force 11.
We don't do that one a whole lot, and so I really wanted to hear it.
I know. I think we tend to do it when it's just the two of us.
All right. So first up, we've got a voicemail from Comic Geek Kev.
Good morning, Symmetrical Legends. So, as we have in the past quite a bit, and nothing wrong with it, we jump right into the action with Supergirl and one of the worst costumes that she's had, and there have been some doozies. Yeah, she had this in the comics for a little bit, I'm pretty sure, a long time ago. I don't know why they'd go with it in this story. Maybe that was the same time as the comics. I don't know, but it's a t-shirt. I mean, come on, whatever. But there is some pretty good action, and it appears she's going to kill someone, and she wakes up and we find out she's having a nightmare. I assumed, and it's later confirmed, that this is the Kent's house, and now they have 2 holes in their ceiling. Again, I'd like to know what room is on top of hers. I hope it isn't Mom and Pa Kent's room. Also, does the heat vision just go through that ceiling? Does it go through the next ceiling? Does it come out the roof? I've always had that question about the way lasers are used in fiction stories. When do they stop? I don't have an answer for that. I'm sure there must be an answer, but I don't know what it is. So, you're having bad dreams. You're in the Justice League. Who do you go to? The team psychic, of course. Although John doesn't really have any answers for her, which seems a little strange given the other telepathic gymnastics that John has been able to pull off. But it works for the story. He is able to give her enough information to, I guess, make her more confused, but not enough to really help her. So, well done, John. Such a powerful psychic. So she speaks to Arrow, and we get some sort of adultish content because, of course, he's seeing Black Canary, and we still haven't heard her speak, which is kind of ironic. Not a single peep from her, although we've only seen, maybe 8 seconds of her altogether up to this point in the show. We also get introduced to the question. And we are reminded or told for the first time, depending on who you are, that Supergirl had been in a coma in Star Labs a few years before when Superman went rogue. I am assuming this was in the Superman animated show. I don't remember all those episodes, although I did see them at the time. But again, that's decades ago. We find out that the Question believes everything that happens is basically a huge conspiracy, just one, and that he goes through everyone's trash. That seems like a bit of a bit much. I don't think even Batman goes through everyone's trash. I think he would probably just stick to this person is subject of my surveillance, so I'm going to go through his trash. So I'd love to see what Batman thinks of the Question in this universe. Anyway, our newly constructed trio heads to Star Labs, because it's the only real clue they have, and they see Emil Hamilton, who, when I first saw his face, was very familiar before they said his name, so I'm assuming that must be from Superman, the show. And he's at least able to explain part of Supergirl's dream with a surgical robot, but he can't give her any insight as to anything else that took place in her dream. I did have a question on this, and I may come back to it later on. The surgical robot, the way he explained it, the way he seemed to explain it, was that this operated on her because it has a kryptonite laser, or I guess he called it a kryptonite scalpel. So it seems like what he's saying is that in her head, she was interpreting the operation as the thing attacking her. That's fair, except that in her dream, it was attacking her, meaning it was attacking Galatea. So did the surgical robot actually attack Galatea? Or is that kind of 2 separate dreams for her? I wasn't sure what to make of that. As they leave, they get ambushed by a creepy robot and some sort of paramilitary gang, who appears to be the same ones from the beginning, but I have a question about that too, and I'll try to get back to that. They get the drop on Supergirl somehow, even though she's supposed to be super fast and super strong and, whatever. And the non-powered guys hold their end up. I thought it was interesting how they were specifically showing the Question. So he drops the grenades on the one trooper, but then the other guy tosses the grenades and pulls the first guy away so no one actually dies. Not that I think the Question will have a problem with killing one of these men, but just the fact that they made it a specific point to show that the grenades dropping, the other guy throwing them off to the side, and then pulling the other guy to safety. So there's not even a question that maybe something happened to this guy, because we can't have that. Anyway, Arrow takes out one of the helicopters. Supergirl finally gets her stuff together and takes out the robot, and the other helicopter takes off. I'm assuming we just didn't see all the soldiers get back on that helicopter. I guess we're just supposed to believe they did. Turns out the robot that attacked them, it's the same model they use for practice up in the Watchtower, which I guess they buy in bulk. Again, who buys them in bulk? Who? But anyway, they put together that these were connected to General Hardcastle, who's the retired robot sender outer person. So they decided to go to his place. I'm going to assume that whole Hardcastle thing, again, is from the Superman episode that I do not remember. And we find out that at least one of the conspiracies is true, or part of the conspiracy. Hardcastle's organization is involved with experiments and actually creating metahumans like Volcana and the Royal Flush Gang, which we saw back in one of the Justice League episodes. And Joker did kind of explain they were experimented on. And he mentions about them having a file on everyone in the Watchtower. I don't find that surprising at all. That some kind of government or quasi-government group would have a dossier on a file on every superpowered being, whether they're part of the Justice League or not. I mean, that they have no control over these people. So of course they're going to have as much information on them as possible. That didn't seem like a conspiracy. It seems like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, after their meeting, the trio is teleported away back to the Watchtower, and we get our first meeting of an as yet unnamed Galatea who has come for the General. Back on the watchtower, Kara is suddenly awake and claims to have knowledge that Hardcastle is now gone. A newscast lets them know that the man from Kara's dream at the beginning of the episode was real and that he's a scientist who is now missing. And we get a very quick little shot of a few of the other members of the League in action. Very, very quick. But it's kind of nice to see. I mean, they're out there amongst the world doing their things. No one's helping these three, but okay. Of course, the question claims that the network that was showing the report is part of the conspiracy, but Arrow just wants to go and do the regular old legwork of going to the biotech firm, so they split up. The question finds the reporter who was, reporting on the story from the ground, basically kidnaps him using a disguise. I don't know. I wonder if that song they played on the radio was written for the episode. I'm assuming so. Maybe it's from another episode of some show. I don't know. I don't think so. I assume it's for this show. And I don't really understand the point of him playing it. I mean, I know he was asking about the pop music and the guy's like, oh, that sucks. And I'm like, okay, but what was the point of playing it? I guess I missed out on what the reasoning would be for that. Anyway, so now Arrow is undercover as a security guard. And we see him for the first time without his mask on, which is kind of weird to see him without it. I mean, it's okay in the shower to have the mask on, but it's not okay when you're undercover, sure. And that shift change of the guards was the most irresponsible thing I've ever seen. You work at a super high-tech lab, and some stranger rolls in with a story about someone else winning a prize, and the guard just says, sure, peace out. Somebody's losing a job there. There's just no way that's not going to be met with some disciplinary action. Anyway, Supergirl joins him. As they turn the corner, we see someone else badge into the door, and it seems pretty obvious that this is Galatea. Back in the cab, the Question is able to get information from the driver, or from the reporter, that he's been seeing Galatea, or at least getting information from her, but they said seeing, I believe. This couple has only been together a week, but he already knows her sleep habits, so apparently, well, I'll just leave it there. No judgment in the DCU. For some reason, Arrow has changed back into his costume to use the computer, but they do get some information about the biotech company using metahuman DNA to run experiments, and Supergirl figures out that it's her DNA that was used. We see the scenes from the beginning of Supergirl's dream, except it's Galatea, although we still don't know her name, going through the same motions as Kara dreamed earlier. Arrow mentions that it's certainly a version of Supergirl, although it's definitely a more mature version, and obviously he's referring to her boob window because, come on, we all know it. They're also able to determine, guess really, that the cloning process has left some kind of connection between the two. Galatea turns on a hologram chamber, or as we Trekkies like to call it, a holodeck, and then quickly attacks Supergirl. She explains their connection is part of the problem, so she's got to get rid of Supergirl, which the Question brings up later. But so we cut to a great scene of the Question inspecting the lock that he has no key card for, like he's going to try to override it some way. Instead, he just tosses a potted plant through the window, all the while singing a little song. Again, I don't know the song. Was it written for the show? Maybe I just don't know it, but we're getting an awful lot of music on this show lately. Anyway, a pretty cool battle ensues between the two women. Arrow gets taken out pretty quickly. The Question makes it onto the hologram chamber. They find Supergirl and Galatea fighting and basically distract Galatea long enough Supergirl to get the drop on her with a car. They fight a little more, and then the Deep State conspiracy goons, I guess, decide that they're done with this fight, and Galatea needs to be taken off the playing field. So they blow up the whole facility. I think they determined she was just getting her butt whipped, even though she was older and more well-trained, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to bring up something again that continues to bother me, and I don't know why it would bother me, but anyway, it does. I've brought this up before about the super speed factor and how it's not really used, even though these two characters both have it. They sort of showed Supergirl using it a little bit in the beginning, which was actually Galatea. And then they showed Supergirl again when she zips into the door as it was closing, although I'm not sure how super speed you need for that to be, but the animation looked like she was using super speed. But for Supergirl to get the drop on Galatea with that car, I'm sorry, she would have seen that coming a mile away. She turned and had a second, and she had plenty of time to move. I just don't, okay, she's surprised, but super speed, the way it's treated in this, not just this show, I just feel like sometimes I really miss out on the way it should work, at least in my head. Their minds should work just as fast as their bodies. But it's fine. It happens. Sometimes I just, like a fight like this really should have looked like the fight between Superman and Zod in Man of Steel, where everything was super speed. Anyway, Supergirl gets the boys and escapes with them as the place blows up. And then we find out that they searched the wreckage, didn't find any sign of the clone as they know her. Still don't have a name, except she called herself Taya. She talks to Dr. Hamilton, who says there's no way that any DNA sample from her came from him to be used to create the clone. She hangs up, and then we find out that of course it came from him, and he created the clone, and he is well on his way to healing her so she can go back out there for whatever the reason is. The Question has assumed earlier it's because the Deep State people, I don't know their name yet, wants their own superhuman, which makes sense. I get that. the whole thing still doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but I do like this one. There's some good action scenes. I love the character of Supergirl. I just don't like the outfit on her at all. I don't know why they ever went with this one. Again, it was in the comics briefly, and maybe it's at the same time, and maybe that's what it was. But like Zatanna last week, she's had some really, really bad outfits. I also like that Green Arrow sort of takes on a almost paternal and protective role for her, because apparently her cousin, who is similarly superpowered, can't be bothered. But I do have a question that maybe I missed. Going back to the original dream, Galatea / Kara is chasing the scientist. I'm assuming that was a case of he knows too much to live, sort of like the general. But who was shooting at her with the kryptonite guns? Because it looks like the same guys from the helicopter. But why were they after her? And then also later after Kara? Was it different people? Was it different uniforms on those men? I mean, she's working for that shadow group, right? So I don't know. Again, maybe they're totally different costumes and I just didn't pay enough attention. But I'm not sure. Like, who was attacking her in Kara's dream? I don't know. Maybe you guys have the answer. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on it. Voice cast notables. Jeffrey Combs, who is well known for playing many, many, many characters on Star Trek shows, as well as plenty of other stuff. Nicole Tom back and doing double duty as Kara and Galatea. Ken Shriner back as Green Arrow. Hamilton was Robert Foxworth, who has been around for years, but he had a really big part in Falcon Crest back in the 80s. Charles Napier, another very familiar face from 80s and 90s TV. Sam McMurray, again, one of those faces you see all the time. And I think he's done quite a bit of voice work, including like The Simpsons. Cree Summer is listed as female singer, which I assume refers to the singer on the radio that I was talking about before. She's currently in Abbott Elementary, but she's had a pretty long career, including A Different World and lots of voice work. So I'm giving this one 8.5 out of 10 questionable conspiracies. I guess like vast conspiracies. I love the way the question is written here. I like the personality. I wish he had gotten more screen time throughout the show. I think we see him a couple more times, but I don't know if he has as prominent a role later on. I think we see him in the background and maybe a couple words here and there. But anyway, overall, good episode. Love seeing Supergirl in action. Love seeing the relationship that she's kind of built there with Green Arrow, and just love the question. So until next time, this is Comic Geek Kev turning the page.
Yeah, good questions, Kev. I mean,
yeah,
I really think everything that we saw in that first dream may have been in the simulator.
Yeah.
And so I think that, but he makes a good point about the robot and that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering about that. So, but as far as the two different groups, I mean, I think they were different costumes, because in the simulator, they kind of appeared a little more silvery to me. And then, I don't know. So I think, I think they were different. So I don't know, but I think they were different. So, but good questions. And, I kind of get where you're coming from, about, wondering, how much of that is, some of the feedback and between the two women. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I kind of agree. I definitely think like the whole robot thing was just part of the training exercise, but it does kind of make you wonder, like, why would he design it exactly the same? Maybe plausible deniability. Maybe he has a big version as like a weapon somewhere. You never know. I don't know. So, but I don't really have a good answer for the two different groups. I think they kind of maybe had to be, maybe like one was like the simulator version and the others were like the real world version. I'm not sure. I did think it was funny he called out the fact that Green Arrow is helping Supergirl, not Superman. That literally didn't occur to me, but it's very funny and very true.
All right, good thoughts. And then next up, we've got Perry White.
Hey, Justice Legends. Perry here with feedback for the Justice League Unlimited episode, Fearful Symmetry. This is going to be truncated feedback, so I'm doing it sort of by the seat of my pants. I just want to give this episode maybe 7 Spider-Man pointing memes out of 10. I thought the whole sort of connection between Supergirl and this show's version of Power Girl, I think her name is Galatea, I thought that was pretty interesting and intriguing, and I like the way that they used the question in this episode. I just sort of feel like this episode just sort of got dropped into our lap sort of out of order or something, because it feels like it could be like an overarching theme or an overarching sort of plot for sort of a season or at least a few episodes, but it just sort of got dropped into our lap after the last episode that we saw. And this is the kind of mystery and intrigue that I'd really like to get into, but it just sort of felt like I didn't see it coming, and quite frankly, I don't know if it's going to get dropped in the next episode or what. Just overall this season, there have been some really good episodes. I just don't feel like there's been a whole lot of connective tissue between episode to episode. It just feels like a whole lot of one-offs, which can be fine, but I'd really like for them to sort of start telling some stories that take us from episode to episode. At least let there be a character through line, or at least let there be some sort of theme through line. I don't know. Maybe I'm just complaining a little bit. I thought this episode was fine. Like I said, I really am intrigued by the sort of mystery of who this Power Girl is, who's behind all of it. And I hope that maybe the season gets into a little bit more of that. But I just don't know if I feel that way based on sort of how we've had a whole bunch of one-off episodes this season. Anyway, those are my thoughts and my feelings. I look forward to hearing what you guys have had to say about this episode. Like I said, I'm a pretty big fan of the question, and I like this whole sort of conspiracy sort of thoughts and feelings that he has, and I really like the way that Green Arrow was sort of playing off that, and how Supergirl was starting to sort of feel and understand how that could actually be a thing. I just thought it was cool, and I thought it was fun, and I really like to see more of it. Anyway, this has been Perry White, hoping to have made his deadline, and if you didn't, I'll be sending in pre-show feedback for the next time. Great Caesar's Ghost.
You made it in. You made it in.
Well done.
Yeah. And I agree. I really kind of wish that this was a bigger arc, and I think we got spoiled with the first two seasons with Justice League of having those arcs, and coming into Unlimited, which really doesn't have arcs, you know, of 2 episode arcs. There's stuff that maybe continues over, but that's not the same kind of, and so we're kind of feeling that whiplash of, I kind of wish they had done like, you know, not everyone needs to be a 2 or 3 episode arc. You can have some single ones in there, but I wish they had more ongoing arcs. But I mean, maybe they were just trying to shake things up and see what works better. But, you know, it doesn't look like they came back to the arcs, except, you know, I think this season has a 2-part finale, but pretty much there's no like 2-parters. Now, whether we see stuff carried over, I don't know, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. After those first two seasons, it was nice having those kind of arcs. So
yeah, I do feel like the arcs gave you more of a fleshed out story. I mean, like on the flip side of that, it's a little easier to cover 121-minute episode of content. Although that doesn't really seem to, you know, change our brevity at all. So no. we still tend to kind of go on and on and on no matter what, which is fun. But I do miss having more of like that fleshed out story, because some of them, they just feel like they wrap really quick. Like we get that resolution like super fast.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I agree. Good stuff. Well, if you want to be like these guys, this is what you need to do.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to Tomorrow's Legends Podcast at gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at Tomorrow's Legends. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/Tomorrow's Legends and become part of the community.
All right, so next week we are talking about the greatest story never told. So the Justice League battles Mordo in the background while the narrative follows Booster Gold as he attempts a close walking black hole. Okay?
Okay.
And he's supposed to be on crowd control. So This looks like an interesting. Booster Gold's kind of got that comedy relief and that kind of stuff. And, he's from the future, but we'll get into that. But, it's going to be interesting kind of, seeing we've got a foreground story and this background story. So, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
For sure. I mean, Booster Gold is always kind of fun to see around, so I'm definitely looking forward to that for sure. Yeah. It'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, that's all we've got for this week, and we look forward to talking to you next week. This is X-Force 11, so say we are.
And this is Harley Quinn. I'm out.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, HBO, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast network. Be sure to check out our partner shows, The Mandalore and Dive into DC, covering your favorite Star Wars and DC Comics properties. Thanks for listening.